The Whispering Serpent. In the quiet town of Amankolo, Jude lay in bed with Linda, the soft glow of the moon casting long shadows across the room. The night was warm, their intimacy evident in the way they held each other. Jude, with his well-known charm and playful grin, brushed Linda's cheek gently. "Babe," Jude whispered, his voice teasing, "what's the similarity between a snake and a, well, you know?" His eyes sparkled with mischief. Linda blinked, surprised by the odd question. "What kind of question is that, Jude?" she asked, her mood shifting. But Jude was insistent. His playful tone took on a darker edge. "Come on, just answer. What's the similarity?" Linda sighed in frustration, clearly irritated. "I don't know." "You're killing the vibe," she muttered. Without warning, Jude began to whistle, a strange, eerie tune that echoed in the room. Linda's confusion turned into alarm as she stared at him, wondering what he was doing. But before she could speak, something stirred. Slowly, a snake, glossy and menacing, emerged from Jude's trousers. Linda gasped in horror as it slithered toward her, its fangs bare. Her scream pierced the night. By morning, the town of Amankolo was buzzing with news. Linda's body had been found, pale and lifeless, at the village square. Rumors spread like wildfire. She had been killed by a venomous snakebite, or so the villagers believed. The town's king, Igbo, was deeply troubled. This was not the first death under such mysterious circumstances. Several women had been found dead over the last few months, all with similar snake bites. The village hunters were summoned, and a reward was offered to anyone who could capture the deadly snake. But Jude was no ordinary man. Unbeknownst to the villagers, he carried a deadly secret, a secret hidden in the strange whistle that summoned the snake lurking inside him. One hot afternoon, Jude made his way to the village well where the women gathered to fetch water. As usual, his presence caused a stir. Women glanced at him with admiration, whispering and giggling amongst themselves. Jude, with his strong build and sharp eyes, was irresistible. But today, something was different. Among the crowd stood a woman Jude had never seen before. Her name was Princess, and her beauty was unlike anything he had ever encountered. Her skin glowed in the afternoon light, and her traditional attire swayed gracefully with each movement. Jude's confidence wavered for the first time. Who was this woman? Why wasn't she captivated by him like all the others? Determined to win her attention, Jude flexed his muscles, sure that no woman could resist him. But Princess barely looked at him, her indifference stinging his ego. Jude was used to getting what he wanted, and Princess' lack of interest only made him more determined. "Would you like some help with that?" he asked, motioning toward the heavy pot of water she was carrying. Princess looked him up and down and shrugged. "Sure, if you think you can manage." Jude lifted the pot effortlessly, but something about her calm demeanor unsettled him. She wasn't like the other women in the village who fell at his feet. Princess was different, and he was determined to make her notice him. As Jude carried Princess' pot, they walked in silence toward her house. She introduced herself casually, "I'm Princess." "And you must be Jude." He nodded, his usual charm faltering. For the first time in his life, Jude felt nervous. "Yeah, that's right. I've heard people talk about you too." Princess smiled faintly, but there was something in her eyes that made Jude uneasy. "So, you're the famous builder everyone talks about?" Jude nodded again. "That's me. Built most of the houses here in Amankolo. But I don't think I've seen your family around before." "We're new," Princess said, her voice smooth but distant. "We moved here recently. And I've heard some strange things since we arrived. They say snakes have been killing women in this village. Have you heard about that?" Jude's heart skipped a beat, but he maintained his composure. "Yeah, it's strange, isn't it? The hunters are doing their best to find the snake responsible. Princess raised an eyebrow. And the whistling. They say there's always a whistle before the women are found dead. Jude forced a laugh. Sounds like a village tale. Nothing to worry about. But Princess wasn't convinced. She gave him a look that pierced through his facade. That evening, Princess invited Jude to dinner at her home. Her parents were kind and welcoming, and they seemed eager to know more about the man their daughter had brought home. The conversation was light, but there was an underlying tension. Over dinner, Princess' father, Chief Obi, leaned forward, his voice serious. Jude, there's been talk of these snake attacks. What do you make of it? Jude shifted uncomfortably in his seat. It's just bad luck, I guess. The hunters will find the snake soon. Princess watched him closely, her eyes never leaving his face. She could feel that there was more to Jude than he was letting on, and her instincts told her to be cautious. As the days passed, Jude grew increasingly obsessed with winning Princess over. But she continued to resist his advances. Frustrated, he decided it was time to use his ultimate weapon. One evening, when they were alone, Jude began to whistle, the same eerie tune that had summoned the snake before. But to his shock, Princess didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled knowingly. I know your secret, Jude, she said softly, her voice cutting through the darkness. You're not the only one who can control the snake. Jude froze, his blood turning cold. How could she know? No one had ever suspected him before. But Princess had been watching, waiting for the right moment. Before Jude could react, Princess began to whistle an even more powerful tune. The snake that Jude had always controlled emerged, but this time, it was under her command. With a single flick of her wrist, Princess sent the snake back at Jude. It struck him, sinking its fangs into his skin. Jude gasped, the venom coursing through his veins. He collapsed onto the floor, his body twitching violently. Princess stood over him, her expression cold. You thought you could play with women's lives and get away with it. But your time is up. As Jude lay dying, the truth of his twisted actions became clear. He had been caught in his own deadly game. The next morning, the village was in shock. Jude's lifeless body was discovered outside Princess' home, his skin pale and cold. The villagers whispered in disbelief, confused by his sudden death. Some speculated that it had been an accident, but others were certain it was something more sinister. Igbo, the village chief, called for a meeting in the town square. The village elders and hunters gathered, their faces etched with concern. The mystery surrounding Jude's death was too similar to the recent string of snake attacks, and the people were growing fearful. What could have caused this? One of the elders asked, shaking his head. The hunters, seasoned men with deep knowledge of the wilderness, had no answers. They had scoured the forest for the dangerous snake but had come up with nothing. Yet, here was another victim, this time, a man, and no one could explain why. Princess, watching from the shadows, remained quiet. She knew more than anyone, but now wasn't the time to reveal the truth. Her family had only just settled in Amankolu, and she didn't want to draw unwanted attention. Not yet. Days after Jude's death, a rumor spread through the village that Linda's ghost had been seen wandering the streets at night. Those who claimed to have encountered her said she appeared pale and sorrowful, her once vibrant beauty now shrouded in sadness. Onika, one of Linda's closest friends, couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. She had loved Linda like a sister and couldn't believe the story the villagers told about a snake bite. There had to be more to it. Late one evening, Onika decided to visit the place where Linda had been found. Armed with a lantern, she walked cautiously through the dark, her heart pounding with each step. The village was eerily quiet, the only sound the rustling of the wind through the trees. When she arrived at the spot, her breath caught in her throat. There, standing under the moonlight, was a faint figure, Linda. Linda. Onika whispered, her voice trembling. Is that you? The ghostly figure turned slowly, its pale face revealing Linda's unmistakable features. Help me, Onika, she murmured, her voice haunting. I didn't die the way they said. Jude. Jude. Onika froze, her mind reeling with confusion and terror. Jude. What did he do? But before Linda's ghost could answer, a sudden gust of wind swept through the clearing, and the figure vanished, leaving Onika alone in the cold night. Disturbed by the encounter, Onika went straight to Princess the next morning. She had heard whispers that Princess had been the last person to see Jude alive, and though they had never spoken before, Onika felt compelled to seek her out. Princess was in her garden, tending to the flowers, when Onika approached. She looked up, her expression calm but guarded. Princess, Onika began, hesitant, I need to talk to you about Jude and Linda. Princess straightened, wiping her hands on her apron. I'm listening. Onika explained everything, the ghostly encounter, Linda's last words, and the growing suspicion that Jude had been involved in something far darker than anyone realized. I don't think Jude was a victim, Onika said, her voice trembling. I think he was the cause of all those deaths. And I think he did something terrible to Linda. Princess remained quiet for a moment, her eyes narrowing in thought. Then, she spoke in a low, measured tone. You're right. Jude wasn't the man everyone thought he was. Onika stared at her, shocked. You knew? Princess sighed. I suspected. But there's more to this than you realize, Onika. Jude had a power, an evil power, that controlled the snake responsible for those deaths. But he's not the only one. Onika felt a chill run down her spine. What do you mean? Princess met her gaze, her eyes dark with a knowledge Onika couldn't understand. There's another force at play here, something older and more dangerous than Jude. And if we don't stop it, more people will die. That evening, Onika returned home, her mind spinning from Princess' revelation. How could she have missed the signs? Jude had always been charming, but there had been something off about him. She had ignored the strange behavior and the whispers about his affairs with other women, dismissing them as gossip. But now, it all made sense. Jude's death wasn't an accident, it was justice. And somehow, Princess had been involved. Onika couldn't sleep that night, haunted by the image of Linda's ghost and the eerie calm in Princess' voice. If Jude wasn't the only one with dark powers, who else was involved? And why hadn't Princess won the village sooner? The next day, Onika sought out Chike, the village's most skilled hunter. Chike had grown up in Amankolu, and his knowledge of the forest and its creatures was unmatched. If anyone could help unravel the mystery, it was him. Chike was sharpening his machete when Onika found him outside his home. He greeted her with a nod but raised an eyebrow at her urgency. I need your help, Onika said breathlessly, recounting her meeting with Princess and the ghostly warning from Linda. Chike listened quietly, his expression growing serious. When Onika finished, he stood up, his face set with determination. If there's something in that forest responsible for these deaths, I'll find it. Together, they set out into the wilderness, armed with machetes and a lantern. The forest was thick and dark, the trees towering overhead, casting long shadows across the ground. As they ventured deeper, the air grew heavy with tension, and Onika couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Suddenly, Chike stopped, holding up a hand for silence. Onika froze, her heart pounding in her chest. In the distance, they could hear it, a faint, eerie whistle echoing through the trees. Do you hear that? Chike whispered, his voice barely audible. Onika nodded, her blood running cold. The whistle was identical to the one Princess had described. It was the sound that signaled death. As they moved cautiously toward the source of the sound, the whistle grew louder, more menacing. Suddenly, a shadow slithered through the underbrush, moving with unnatural speed. Chike raised his machete, ready to strike, but before he could act, the snake appeared, huge and menacing, its eyes glowing in the darkness. Onika gasped, stumbling backward in terror. The snake reared up, its fangs glistening with venom, and hissed, ready to strike. But just as it lunged toward them, a strange, melodic whistle cut through the night. The snake paused, frozen in mid-strike, and then slowly slithered away, disappearing into the shadows. Chike and Onika stood in stunned silence, their breaths ragged. Something, had stopped the snake. But who? Shaken by their encounter, Onika and Chike hurried back to the village. They had come face to face with the deadly force behind the snake attacks, but they still didn't understand who was controlling it, or why. Onika's thoughts raced as they approached her home. Could it be Princess? Had she summoned the snake to protect them, or was she the one behind all the deaths? Before she could answer her own questions, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Standing in the doorway of her house, waiting for her was Princess. And she wasn't alone. A figure stood beside her, cloaked in darkness. A figure Onika had never seen before. Onika stopped dead in her tracks, her eyes fixed on the figure standing next to Princess. Chike, sensing her hesitation, stood still beside her, gripping his machete tightly. The stranger was tall, dressed in a long, dark cloak that obscured most of his face. But as the light from Onika's lantern flickered across him, she caught a glimpse of something unsettling in his eyes, a coldness, an unnatural stillness that sent a chill down her spine. Princess stepped forward, her expression unreadable. Onika, I'm glad you're here. There's someone you need to meet. The stranger remained silent, his gaze locked on Onika. She felt the weight of his presence, as if his very being was pressing against her chest, making it hard to breathe. Chike, always the protective hunter, stepped between Onika and the stranger. Who is this? He demanded, his voice low and dangerous. Princess smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. This is Obina. He's someone who knows more about the situation we're dealing with. Onika swallowed hard, her mind racing. She didn't trust Princess, and this Obina figure only deepened her unease. What situation? Onika asked, her voice trembling slightly. Obina finally spoke, his voice deep and calm, but with an eerie undertone that made Onika's skin crawl. The force behind the deaths in this village. The snake is merely a tool, a servant of something greater. Chike scoffed. What are you talking about? We saw the snake. It's a wild creature, nothing more. Obina's gaze shifted to Chike, and for a moment, the air around them seemed to grow colder. You saw what I wanted you to see, he said quietly. The snake is a guardian, bound to protect something much older and much more dangerous than you can imagine. Onika's heart raced. Protect what? Obina's eyes flickered with something dark and ancient. A secret. One that has been hidden in this village for generations. Onika's breath caught in her throat as she stared at Obina, his cryptic words sinking into her mind. What secret could possibly be lurking in a place as simple as Amankolo? The village had always seemed so peaceful, so normal until now. I don't understand, Onika said, her voice shaky. What secret? Obina turned to Princess, as if giving her the responsibility to explain. Princess hesitated, glancing at Onika with a mixture of sympathy and guilt. It's about the land, Princess finally said, her voice soft. This village is built on sacred ground, Onika. Long before our ancestors settled here, this land was a place of power, a place where dark rituals were performed, and where a powerful entity was sealed away. Onika's mind reeled. A powerful entity. What are you saying, Princess? Are we talking about some kind of curse? Princess nodded. In a way, yes. The snake that has been killing people, it's a guardian of that entity. And Jude, he discovered this secret. He tried to use the entity's power for his own gain, but he didn't fully understand what he was dealing with. Onika's heart pounded in her chest as the pieces began to fall into place. Linda, she whispered. Did Jude, was he responsible for her death? Princess looked away, her silence confirming Onika's worst fears. Chike, who had been listening intently, finally spoke. If this is true, then we need to stop this. We need to destroy whatever it is that's causing these deaths. Obinna shook his head slowly. It's not that simple. The entity is bound to the land, and it's far more powerful than you can imagine. To confront it is to risk everything. Onika felt a wave of dread wash over her. Then what do we do? Obinna's eyes met hers, his gaze cold and unyielding. You must make a choice. Either leave this place and never look back, or stay and face the consequences of uncovering the truth. Onika couldn't believe what she was hearing. Leaving the village wasn't an option. This was her home, and she couldn't abandon it to whatever dark force was lurking beneath the surface. But staying meant facing an unimaginable danger. Chike, ever the warrior, stepped forward. I'm not running away. If there's a fight to be had, I'll fight. I won't let this thing destroy our village. Onika admired his bravery, but she wasn't sure if courage alone would be enough. She turned to Princess. What about you? You've known about this for longer than anyone. What do you plan to do? Princess hesitated, her expression conflicted. I didn't come to this village by chance, she admitted. My family has a history with this land. I was sent here to protect the secret, to ensure that no one disturbed the entity. Onika's eyes widened. You knew all along. Why didn't you warn us? Princess sighed. Because I believed that as long as the secret was kept, no harm would come. But Jude, he meddled with forces he didn't understand. And now, the entity is awakening. Obinna stepped forward, his presence commanding. There's only one way to stop this, but it's dangerous. The entity must be confronted directly and sealed away once again. But if it's not done properly, the entire village could be destroyed. Onika's mind raced. They were talking about confronting a force that had been sealed away for generations, a force that had already claimed lives. But if they didn't act, more people would die. The choice was clear, but terrifying. I'll do it, Onika said, surprising even herself with her determination. I can't let this thing continue killing people. We have to stop it. Chike nodded in agreement. I'm with you. Obinna's gaze softened, just for a moment. Very well. But understand this, once we begin, there's no turning back. The days that followed were a blur of preparation. Obinna guided them through ancient rituals, teaching them the chants and symbols needed to confront the entity. Princess gathered the necessary materials, her knowledge of the land's history proving invaluable. Onika and Chike trained tirelessly, honing their skills for the battle ahead. The village, oblivious to the dark forces at play, went about its daily routine, unaware of the looming danger. But as the night of the ritual approached, a sense of foreboding hung heavy in the air. Onika could feel it, the entity stirring beneath the earth, waiting for the moment it would be unleashed. I hope you enjoyed the tale. If so, please like the video, comment, share it with your family and friends, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell for more enchanting tales like this one. Goodbye.